In this next lesson, we're going to go into the gradient mesh tool. So far we've explored the linear gradients, the radial gradients, and the freeform gradients. And they're great, but the gradient mesh is a bit more complicated, but also gives us the opportunity to have a little bit more of an implied 3D to our mesh. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do a very simple one to start with, just to show it in theory, and then we're going to try and use it with intent to see how we can show a practical application of the gradient mesh. So I'm going to open up a new file. For now, we're going to start with just a letter-sized document while we explore the gradient mesh, and then I'm going to be importing a photo so that we can use the gradient mesh with intent. When that time comes, we can always resize the document so that it matches the photo if necessary. So for now, we're just going to create any kind of small, simple shape, and then we're going to start using the gradient mesh. So it will behave more predictably if we start with a primitive shape. In fact, we're going to eventually be using the rectangle tool and adjust it so that we can take the shape we need it to have. But first, we'll start with the pen and just draw something really basic. So I'm going to left mouse down, just a little wiggly shape. There we go. Kind of looks like a pear. And make some small adjustments. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to fill it with a color. Whatever you consider your base color to be. So I'm going to double click on the fill, and I'm just going to select green. It kind of looks like a pear, so I'll just choose a green color for it. There we go, it's beautiful. To access the gradient mesh, it is towards the middle left side of the toolbar. It's actually its own icon, and it looks like a little square with lines going through it. And as you can see here, the lines have little curves to them. That actually represents an ability that we can do with the gradient mesh. So we're going to click on it, and we're going to click somewhere inside. Now where we click does matter, but right now we're just going to experiment and see how it works at all. So I'm going to click inside. There we go. So we get this interesting shape. We get this curve with a dot in the center, our anchor point, and then we have an anchor point at the ends. Now, depending on how you drew it and depending on where you placed your gradient mesh, this may have created new anchor points, or it may have used anchor points that are already there. And either way is fine. So it doesn't look like color-wise it made any difference, and that's because we're using the color that was used for the base. So it's just two layers of the same color. So what we're going to do is change the color. Again, you can change it to anything you'd like right now. I'll make a light green. I'm going to hit OK. So what's happening here? We're going to zoom in. I'm going to hold down Command and hit the plus key on the keyboard to zoom in. And in fact, let's make this color something much different. Let's try orange. There we go. You see the difference a little better. So what's happening is we chose this point, this individual point, to have that color, that orange color. And then every other point, here, all along the edges, all of these have green because we had set that as its base color. So if we wanted to change any of the existing points, you can select it with the direct selection tool, and you can just change its color. I'll pick a very, very dark green. I'm gonna hit OK. And now, from over here to down here, it's going from black to green. From this point to this point, it's going from black to orange. So it's blending in a very controlled manner. And you have these curves inside. And these curves can represent the inner contours of the shape. So if you can visualize the object in 3D space, what parts of the object are coming towards you and which parts are coming away from you. So if you want to adjust, so like down here, it looks like it's almost indented a little bit. You could take this handle, again using the direct selection tool, left mouse down and drag, and now it's coming out more. It's a little bit more shapely in terms of the middle, upper middle section here coming towards us, with the lower part coming away from us. Up here, this handle. We can pull this up too. And we can even move it. We can move the point. There we go. We can shorten or extend the handles. Now, as you can see, you get some strange bends sometimes. If we draw arbitrarily with the pen tool, and we're not paying attention to how many points you have around the edges of your document, you can sometimes get unexpected results from the gradient mesh. Now, if I want to add, because I can add more points, I can add as many points as I want to this. Let's say I go up here and I left mouse click. I can double click. I can pick another color. Hit OK. And now, same thing. It's going from this lighter color, almost like a highlight, to the green, mid-tone green around it. But here it's transferring from the light green into the orange. So this is the most efficient way if you wanted to emulate a photo or a painterly graphic with those kind of blends of colors that are otherwise really hard to achieve in Illustrator. Now you can also place additional curves inside. So when I had created this point, it created a curve as best it could with the information it already had. And again, yours might look different. It might even behave unexpectedly depending on how you drew your graphic. But it will intersect with the other lines. So it'll intersect with the edges that we already have around the document. It will also intersect with the other curves we've placed inside. So we have an extra point in here and an extra point in here. You could click on somewhere on the line, any of the lines. You get a little plus. And so what it'll do is it'll place a point right in here. Now it does bring another curve through our shape, but it did not add any more vertical lines. It only added a horizontal line. You can do the same thing. You can choose a horizontal line and tap on it, and it will draw a vertical line through it, but it won't create any new horizontal lines. However you do it is fine, is so that it's behaving with intent and doing what you're expecting it to do. Now, something to keep in mind as well is that the more points you add, the heavier the file can get. So file heaviness hasn't really been an issue so far, and it generally doesn't tend to be that much of an issue with the tools we've used so far, with some exceptions. Or if you're importing a lot of graphics and you're keeping the graphics embedded inside the document, that can make it heavy. But generally, working with vectors doesn't tend to be heavy until you get to a tool like this one. This tool can get very heavy on your computer. So this amount of points shouldn't be too bad, but if you have lots and lots and lots of points, you can get a lot of detail, and therefore you can work with graphics that are, let's say, a person's face or skin tones and get all the blends of colors, and it can look great. And in fact, it can look photoreal, but it can also start weighing down very heavily on your computer. So something that I might recommend, especially if you're not sure what your computer can handle, is do a few passes on the gradient mesh and maybe save your document, maybe do a new version of it and see how your computer's running. If it starts to slow down a lot, then you'll have an idea of, okay, this is about as much as my computer can safely handle. So that is working with the gradient mesh. Next, we're going to take a photo and we're going to create a gradient on top of it, and we're going to avoid creating shapes that are a little bit hard to control. We're going to mold our shapes a little bit more carefully.